Okay, Year 12, the next set of defining and understanding the problem that needs to be considered is design specifications. Design specifications, their aim is to turn the needs and the requirements, the functionality and the performance issues, all of the requirements and the boundaries into a set of realistic and workable specifications. Now, when we're looking at design specifications, we're not outlining anything concrete. We're just saying, when developing design specifications, you can look at them from two perspectives. What things do you need to be considered from the user's perspective? So what design specifications should be developed, and what design specifications should be developed from the developer's perspective. Okay, from the developer's perspective, design specifications create a framework around which they will work, depending on their role in the development team. Okay, so there's a common approach and a feel to the project is the reason why we have design specs. So we come up with design specs so everyone, all of the developers, everyone on the team is on the same page. Okay, the developer needs to consider in the design specifications. From their perspective, these are the things that need to be considered. What modelling tools are they going to use? Are they going to use IPOs? Are they going to use structure charts? Are they going to use DFDs? Are they going to use system flowcharts? What modelling tools are going to be essential to the nature of this project? So they might not need to use all of them. They might only need to use some of them. How are they going to write out the algorithms for each module or each section of this? How in detail do they need to be? Do they need to work collaboratively on it? When they're looking at the whole project, what kind of data types need to happen? What kind of structures? Are we going to be working in arrays? Are we going to need a database? How are we going to name variables? Let's set up a convention for naming variables. Let's make sure we do this at the start of our variable name. Let's make sure we use underscores. Let's make sure we don't use or make sure maybe we might decide to capitalize each letter and not use underscores. These kind of things need to be considered. How are we going to store all these variables? Obviously, they're going to be stored in a data dictionary. Where are we going to put this data dictionary? What software design method or software design approach, approach. What development approach are we going to use? Or what documentation do we need to create around this? These are all the questions that need to be considered from the developer's perspective. Also, once these specifications have been developed, what the developers can then do is say, okay, now we've got this developed, you're on this task, you're on this task, you're on this task, we're all on the same page, we've got the overall direction, let's go. Then from the user's perspective, the design specifications will be directly related to how they will experience the new system. Okay, I have no idea why that's on 3 lines, but sorry. Okay. Things that should be considered from the user's perspective when setting out design specifications. Now, this is not the user doing this. These are just considerations that will be directly related to the user's experience. These are things such as interface design. Okay, so as a developer, you need to consider, well, how is the user going to use this and how, therefore, should I design the interface? How should I apply appropriate messages, pop-up boxes, dialog boxes, information question marks that I can click and the user can get better messages? What kind of icons do I need to display? What kind of data formats for display? Great example of data formats for display is the date of birth field. Depending on what system you use, some date of birth fields start at 2017. Who was born in 2017 that'd be filling out an online form? Seriously? What is a better way to format that field? You also need to consider, obviously, the social and ethical issues. Do you have any social and ethical issues? Is there any ergonomics? Is it going to have to be configured for a particular system? These are all the things that are directly related to the user experience. The next thing that needs to be considered from the user perspective is if they are using your software system within an existing operating system, and within that existing operating system there is keyboard shortcuts, how can they be utilized? Sorry, you can probably hear a plane going overhead. How can they be utilized in your particular system? So big example is Control or Command C, Control or Command V. They are common keyboard shortcuts used on both, like Control for Windows, Command for OS X. They are common keyboard shortcuts. Option usually brings up menus in Windows. It brings up hidden menus and things in applications such as Chrome as well. So Could you utilize those common keyboard shortcuts that your users are used to using in your software application? Also, how are you going to consider the particular operating system settings that exist within whatever operating system that your user uses? These are things that need to be considered. Also, the color of the windows. You do not make a highlighted yellow window that you particularly have. This is Windows, not Windows operating system, but the window that you will be using in your particular application. Okay. So the system modeling tools can be used to determine user-based specifications, particularly in terms of interface design and prototyping. In terms of interface design, you can display for the user the design of icons, the wording of messages, the placement of elements on the screen. You can give users a really clear idea about the use of menus. When menus will pop up, are they dynamic like they are in web-based applications such as YouTube? So the menus appear and disappear and you can enable them by those 3 lines, or are they always going to be there like they are in other applications where you can always see the file, the edit, the view, etc. menus. These are all things that need to be considered from the user's perspective. Finally, the last thing that needs to be considered from a user's perspective is the consideration of the hardware necessary to execute your new software solution. So, what processor size do they have? What RAM size do they have? What hard disk space do they have? Are the specifications you set out going to be in line with the performance issues that you have already addressed in the design problem? And that's it, guys. When you're designing design specs, when you're developing design specs, they're the things that need to be considered from both a developer's perspective and a user's perspective.